Good afternoon. Dobry den. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. Thank you. And as Katarina just mentioned, I arrived just hours ago from Kyiv. And I will have to say how grateful I am for the opportunity to be here in a community with a shared mission. And I want to thank Katarina for all of her work in putting this together. The panels so far have been terrific. We have our work cut out for us panelists, but I think we're up to the challenge. So thank you, Katarina, for organizing us this afternoon. As she mentioned, I work for the Kyiv Independent, and in preparation for this panel, I thought it would be helpful if I share with you some data about what engages Americans now, over 1,300 days into the full-scale invasion. Now, the Kyiv Independent reaches over 5 million people monthly, and the data that I'm speaking about is not specifically from our subscribers, folks like yourself who are super engaged in Ukraine's victory. I'm talking about average Americans, what they click on more than their peers in the global community. And there are 3 broad themes. The first one is any headline that frames Russia's war in a broader global context. For example, Russia's cooperation with Iran or North Korea. They draw the highest click-through rates from Americans, even more so than our global peers. The second theme are stories that highlight Russian cruelty to other Russians. I don't know if this is interesting to you, but stories that feature, for example, when a Russian commander shoots those that are surrendering or those that are behind actually outperform other stories on Google Discover. And finally, and this is, I think, a lesson for us all and for something for us to think about as we tell our own stories, are pieces showing Ukrainian ingenuity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. These are stories that engage Americans. And as Dora mentioned at the very beginning of our session today, our stories are our most powerful tool. And so my hope for today's conversation is that each of you walk away with some ideas, insights, and frameworks that help you tell your story more effectively. And with that, I'd like to kick us off and get right into it. So I'm going to ask our first panelist here today, Ambassador Erin McKee, who very recently joined Nova Ukraine as CEO, to introduce herself, to share one thing about storytelling that she's learned, and then the 2-part question is to talk a little bit about the transition that she's recently made from positions of leadership and diplomacy and development to leading one of the largest aid organizations in this country. What have you learned from that shift about storytelling?
Thank you. Thank you all. So as Don said, I'm Ambassador Erin McKee. Please call me Erin. And I have the privilege and honor to serve as the first president and CEO of Nova Ukraine, who has been around for a while, but the board realized that they all have day jobs and needed, as the organization matured and grew, to transform themselves. And so I'm extraordinarily privileged, but I'm not new to Ukraine. My most recent role was as the assistant administrator, which is assistant secretary equivalent for all of Europe and Eurasia for USAID. And so I led your taxpayer dollars to intervene in then the United States of America's largest humanitarian and development response since World War II, since the Marshall Plan. Previously, I did serve as ambassador in the South Pacific, in the Indo-Pacific, where we were facing a malign actor or challenges of a different sort. And so I'm hoping to bring a lot of that to bear together with all of you to tackle and support Ukraine and tackle Putin's wanton destruction from the ground up. And that's what all of you represent, is individuals, people, grassroots, touch points, and that's where strength and power lie. And so I'm going to answer the two-part question backwards. My previous donors were the American taxpayers. And so the stories, the testimony, the pitches I had to give were to Congress, to talk about how important it was on behalf of the entire country to continue sustained support for Ukraine. And even in that context, stories that they could remember and share with their constituents, with all of you, were the most compelling and the most powerful. So my takeaway, and it straddles whatever position you're in, is that even at the start of the full-scale invasion, urgency alone doesn't sustain support. Urgency in the moment, people react. But how to sustain that over time, what it amounts to is connection. Finding common ground, as Donna just said, having a story and doing your homework and knowing what type of story would resonate, whether it's meeting with a representative from an agricultural state here and talking about the importance of protecting and preserving Ukraine's agricultural might. Let's not forget that agriculture represents 22% of Ukraine's GDP, right? And so how those partnerships, how those investments, how those American firms, Cargill, John Deere, ADM, Bunge, all have deep investments and have been banking on Ukraine for decades. And that strengthening those ties were really important. And boiling it down to the farmer that you met who invented a demining tool with a tractor and a sled tied behind it because he had to plant for the next crop, not just to sustain his family, not just to sustain his livelihood, but to ensure that his community and the supply chain or the value chain that he contributed to was also sustained. And so that's what I've learned over many years, but in particular the last few years in working in Ukraine, is the power of the individual speaks more than one voice. And it's representative of how many connections and how much we have in common. In 2022, as I said, people responded to the crisis. But in 2025, what I've found, fast forward now, unfortunately, we're into the fourth year, they respond to clarity. And when I say clarity, I don't mean just evidence, not just figures. Those are important because data drives everything. But backing it up with an example that people can see, touch, feel, and understand, or that resonates with them on a personal level, or in this instance, because we're all here for the summit, on a constituent level. What does their voter base really care about? And I can guarantee you that what they care about, Ukrainians care about too. Freedom, cost of living, safety, security, stability. And so finding that common ground, finding those connections, telling those stories, doing your homework, and making it about individuals, but individuals that people can see in situ, but also at scale, right? Because we can save one life at a time, but we're all here to not just save lives. We're here to help Ukraine win the war and win the peace, and looking ahead to the future. And that is so important for what we need to do to keep in our minds, that it's not just about today. Yes, today matters, but it's what we do today and how that contributes to tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you. Ambassador McKee just made the transition to be the CEO of Nova Ukraine a couple of months ago. I'd actually now like to turn it to someone who's been in her role leading another large organization for the past 5, almost 6 years, Dr. Marina Bariuc. May I ask you to please introduce yourself? And then your two-part question after that is, what have you learned from leading United Help Ukraine across the past almost 5, 6 years? How has your storytelling evolved?
Thank you. And thank you, Katerina. Thank you, Danica, for this lovely panel, for Katerina for organizing a terrific conference. And thank you all, because you are what we're here for. And the audience, that's one of the things that I'm going to be talking about, is knowing your audience. And seeing you really inspires us all. And I think this is great that we have over 700 delegates coming to this summit for the first time. And this is the 7th that United Help Ukraine has been sponsoring. United Help Ukraine's journey started back in 2014, as other organizations that are present here, Nova, Razom, and others. And when we talk about communications, since 2014, communications have changed in the past 11 years dramatically. And those communications where we were just a small organization, many of us were just small organizations, grassroots organization with volunteers only in 2014, but with a clear mission. We all had the mission of supporting Ukrainian people. The programs that we started back in 2014 for United Help Ukraine, they have not changed. The scope and the magnitude of those programs have changed, I would say, exponentially from 2014. And number one thing that I want to share with the audience, and I think this panel about communications. So we want to communicate to you what we've learned, and we also want to hear questions from the audience, because the communications, this is the key to successful fundraising, to successful advocacy, to forming successful partnerships. And number one thing is your mission. And I think that a lot of people here have the same mission. We're here advocating for Ukraine. We've heard terrific panels with different perspectives saying several things. And one is mission. We need to be true to our mission. And a lot of organizations continue to be true to their mission since 2014. Number two, and Erin just mentioned clarity. And this is messaging, clarity of your messaging. And we've heard today and yesterday that when you talk to your donors, when you talk to your representatives, your partners, you have to have clear messaging. And if you don't understand your mission, or you don't understand what you're talking about, you come up a bit vague and uncertain. But if you have a clear messaging and you understand what you're talking about, this is a key. And clarity is definitely a number one thing. You want to be very clear what your message is, and you transfer that message and kind of project that message to your audience. That's number two. Message is the same, but the way you deliver it can change. So number three is knowing your audience. And that's what I said, like, we know you. We know you are amazing supporters of Ukraine. So our message to you is one. If in this audience we had people who were opposing support to Ukraine, I think we would have to have a very different way of delivering that message, knowing that the audience is in opposition. So having a message that is clear, consistent, and also understanding your audience, doing, of course, your homework, knowing who is who and what you're going to be talking about and who you're going to be talking about is important. Number four in communications, and that's where United Help Ukraine, that's what we've learned quite a bit since 2022. I think when we first think about what worked in 2022 and what doesn't work now, what worked in 2014 and doesn't work now. Those are big, I guess, gaps in our history. In 2022, most people responded to an emergency. That was a huge spike for all of us. People didn't need to know who you are, what you were doing. As long as you are supporting Ukraine, that was enough. They poured millions. They poured millions in support over just a few months in 2022. That is a very different scenario now. And most organizations, I'm sure some of you represent, they've seen this huge spike in 2022 when people were responding to this crisis, to the humanitarian crisis, to emergency, and now the crisis is still there. Every day we hear that the drone attack, the missile attack is worse than yesterday, and yet people do not respond to that. That desensitization of audience, as we see it, makes us think about ways of communicating in different, and having a different strategy to communicate now, because that doesn't work. We've seen that, again, day after day, the headline news are, this is the worst attack on Kyiv yet, since 2022. What has changed? People got used to it. They got used to those news. And Danisa, it's interesting that you mentioned those three main clickable, I guess, news that people are interested to hear. People are not interested to hear about the bombings. There's very specific, I guess, and it's probably very different from what it was in 2022 that we see in 2025. So I think this is for organizations, for us communicators, it's very important to understand the audience, understand the news, and know how to find the ways to reach to them. And what Aaron was saying about stories, I think this is a great tool that we all use, because numbers no longer reach the audience. We have to come and bring those personal stories that really resonate with the audience. And I will tell you, for United Help Ukraine, we grew from a small organization back in 2014 to a multi-million-dollar nonprofit that is one of the largest, together with other organizations supporting Ukraine, one of the largest in the US, Ukrainian diaspora organization. And the other thing, that number 6 that I wanted to mention, is compared to 2022, when people were responding to emergency situation in the crisis, what we're experiencing now, that we have to have that messaging and constant communication. I think this is another thing that I just want to mention, because one is constant communication, so you continue to provide updates, you continue to communicate, you continue to come up with stories, events, newsletters, any type of messaging. And that is true for all of you advocates. What we've heard yesterday and today is that your job is not only to come here and talk to your representatives and staffers. Your job is also go back and continue that communication. That doesn't mean that you have to write to your staffer every day, but it does mean that, and it's important for all of us to continue that communication. I see Jim in the audience, right, that you're nodding your head, because you as a staffer know that those who write to you periodically, you remember them. And next time they ask for the appointment for the meeting, they will say, yes, because I know you. You invited me to the event. You came up with this, interesting article, or you brought this article to me that I can then share with the representative and say how important Ukraine is, right? So continue that communication, as my number 6 point is absolutely crucial. So the clear messaging, knowing your audience, continue communication, finding new ways to address issues that they haven't changed, but we have to find ways of telling the stories and having the stories also that resonate with the public. We know that we talked about bringing children back yesterday, and we continue to talk about 20,000 plus kids that are still abducted and are still remain on Russian territory. And that resonates with majority of people. They know that they need, for long-lasting peace, one of the conditions that President Zelensky, his administration, continues to talk about is bringing children back. Why? It resonates. And I think for us, finding these ways of understanding the mission, having clear idea, communicating, and continue to bring people together around us, staying united, is absolutely crucial. And from our experience, my personal experience as first a volunteer for United Help Ukraine, then moving on to become a board member, then president and the CEO, and leading this organization to where we are now with amazing team that we have. And this is, again, one of the things that you have to continue to be united and continue to communicate in the most effective and efficient way. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. I see so many of you taking notes. I love it. Now I want to flip a little bit to maybe the other side and get another perspective. So I'm actually going to jump to Preston Stewart. Many of you may know Preston. I'd like him to introduce himself, and then I'd love your perspective on what advocates or NGOs can learn from how you sustain audience engagement on platforms like YouTube or Instagram.
All right. Thank you so much. An honor to be here. So a couple things that I think are worth hitting on right out the gate is I know it seems more and more like maybe not as many people here in the United States are focused on Ukraine. You see an event that if you're following the war, something crazy happens, and you pull up the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Associated Press, whatever it might be, and it's not on the front page, it's not on the second page, not on the third page, and it can be exhausting and feeling like maybe we're losing sight of that. Not quite. I think for some, yes, but we're talking about, the communication piece, the fundraising piece. In 2025, we've fundraised $475,000 for Ukrainian units and aid organizations from random individuals. There's no companies involved. There's no big corporations. So while some people are maybe getting focused on other items, know that the people that really care are reaching into their pocketbooks every single day and donating crazy amounts of money that they no doubt could use, right? Everybody could use an extra $10, $20, $100, whatever it might be. So there are those people out there. Don't lose hope. There's plenty of them. They may not be the loudest of voices, and we are distracted with our current news cycle, but there is still a lot of positive feedback out there, people very much involved and wanting to contribute to the Ukrainian cause. Now, in terms of the things that I've learned in doing this work, I skipped right over the introduction. Maybe I should go back to that. I make videos online, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and conduct interviews with people like Sam sitting here in the front row talking about drones. That'll come out tomorrow, Sam. It is coming. And I try to provide updates to people around the world about what's happening in different conflict zones. Ukraine has, of course, been a focus now for a couple years. The big lesson that I've learned from that I think can apply to everybody in this room is do more. More. Like that's it. It's very simple strategy. It's very difficult. It can be hard, but that's it. That's all it is. If your medium is writing, write more. If your medium is doing interviews, do more interviews. That is our information cycle that we live in today. Like it or not, that's just what it is. Everybody, when you're looking at the media on your phone, whether it's on social media and things are, you're swiping 600 times in a few minutes without even realizing it, that's what you're competing with. And in that competition cycle is everything. Right? I mean, you've got a funny cat video and then maybe an update about a strike that happened last night in Ukraine asking for fundraising dollars. And right after that are NFL highlights from last weekend's game. That's where the story fits in. You got to find a way to meet the people where they are. Now, I don't like it. I wish that everybody would open up maybe Foreign Affairs every day and dig into some of these detailed articles, or the Kyiv Independent, and really dig into what's happening. That's not the world we live in. So we got to meet the audience, meet the people where they are. And where they are is changing quickly, and that's where more helps. Their consumption habits, or how you or I articulate information, changes. We need practice. Nobody in here is perfect. And if you are perfect today, it's all going to change tomorrow. People are looking for something different. It might be a little lighter, it might be more serious, it might be something as simple as putting music in the background, or text over the screen, or writing a longer article or a shorter article, whatever it might be. The way to figure out what's going to land with the audience, you can't brainstorm just sitting on, what was it, the Cracker Barrel logo change we went through this year? All right, yeah. So for anybody not familiar, great job. Our country about fell apart because they changed the logo for Cracker Barrel. And And you can't, I don't know the number, but you have to imagine millions of dollars in consulting and you know, getting all these agencies to come up with these different ideas. And it didn't last. Like, I don't know that they changed one store. They announced it. It made so many people so angry. They pulled it down and it's gone. So that's what's happening behind the scenes. We're not going to match that. We don't have, you know, anybody in this group, we don't have those dollars to put into some crazy campaign or strategy of just the right messaging to put out this month, or maybe right around Christmas, have just the right story to land around the new year. We're not going to have it. What we have is the fact that we can just keep posting, keep publishing, keep putting out more information, and watch the feedback from your audience. It's going to surprise you what they react to and what they don't, but you can just do it again. And the more you put out there, the more you learn, the more you can adapt, the more you connect, that audience continues to grow and you start to see more and more and more results. It's not easy, but it is something that everybody in this room can do, is just more. Whatever the platform might be, consider doing more. The big article you did, the big interview you did, the big video you put out last week, I'm sorry, people aren't going to see it in another week. And that sucks sometimes, I know, because we put a lot of work into this stuff. And the fact that it goes out there into the world, and then it was so powerful, and you put so much work into it, maybe 10, 20, hundreds of hours editing something, and it's gone. That's it. Nobody's going to see it in a month, let alone a year or two. So just accept that, and just know that's going to be the case, and come back to bat with something else. Try again, learn a little bit, try again. And as you continue doing that, whether it's day by day, week by week, or month by month, you'll start connecting with more and more people in a better, you know, more effective manner, and it's going to have a lot of long-term results. I guarantee that.
Thank you so much. Just made a mental note of meeting people where they're at. What an important message. My theory of the case around the second theme that I shared of interest to Americans, Russian cruelty to other Russians, is that's entertainment and the entertainment value. Preston, so if you communicate with people at large scale, I think 1 million folks on YouTube, a little over 1 million, a few 100,000 on Instagram, I'm actually going to turn it to Tamara. You communicate with folks at a local level, folks who may not be familiar with Ukraine, but you serve as an advocate and a voice within your local community. May I ask you to introduce yourself and talk about what you've learned about communicating at a local level?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my name is Tamara Denisenko, and I always say, roots in Ukraine, born in Germany, but made in America. In 1993, we pardoned Birth Poltava. And in 1998, on the initiative, again, of our newly elected town supervisor, we invited the Poltava City Council officials to come to the USA to build stronger business ties, cultural ties, joint ventures. If anybody remembers in the 90s, that was the big thing, doing joint ventures. Unfortunately, things didn't work out the way we were planning. And we invited them in 98, and they came to do that, as well as celebrate our credit union's 45th anniversary. I will never forget my discussion with one of the delegates, then retired General Burlakov. I was very naive, and I mentioned to him how easily Ukraine had won independence at that time. I will never forget his words. He said, "Ні, пані Tamara, independence is not easy. We will pay for it with our blood." With our ongoing positive visibility and multifaceted presence in the greater Rochester community, our town of Irondequoit leadership in 2000 supported the recognition of our Ukrainian community's 100-year contribution to the area with the building of a centennial monument on the town grounds by the Irondequoit Town Hall. And then in 2015, with the support of our Ukrainian American Community Foundation at the credit union, we were able to have an exhibit of Ukrainian culture at the Irandokoit Public Library, which I've been doing now for 10 years. And everybody who comes there knows, oh, Ukrainci, the Ukrainians are here. They think Irandokoit is Ukraine. With the first invasion in 2014, Rak Maidan was established, and they are one of the members of the organization. A humanitarian aid organization that has had very personal connections to our universities, businesses, nonprofits, public officials, and churches. And Rak Maidan at that time was able to get broad public support when the full-scale invasion occurred in 2022, with humanitarian aid collection branches at our credit union branches, with medical support from the well-known Intervol organization, which I worked with in the 1930s to provide medical supplies to Poltava, Volyn, and other cities. And Xerox Corporation provided us with warehouse areas, and individual families who had a connection to Ukrainians because of our positive image provided individual support for the TPS and U4U program individuals. Hopefully that will continue under this current administration. In 2023, the teachers from Dnipro reached out to me and said, Pani Tamara, can we do something for our children? They are learning English and they need to practice with real Americans. So we started an online Zoom discussion between middle schools in our town and schools in Dnipro. And that was very heartwarming for both sides of the ocean. American children learned about how to survive, how to get an education during war. And the Ukrainian students learned about the diverse cultural, broad spectrum of our students in our area. From that initiative, that small initiative of one-to-one, we began, somebody said, let's share poetry, let's share essays, because the kids in Ukraine need to practice writing and speaking English. So out of that came our book. Our book we published of children's poetry, children's essays, and artwork. And please, if you don't mind, I'll just read one paragraph from one of the children's from Ukraine. I speak half Napiw. One of the paragraphs that the children wrote from the Poltava Lyceum number 1. Don't be sad when I'm not around. Pray and kiss the child. Remember, the Lord protects those who defend the homeland. She's writing a letter to her dad. Dad, I'm proud of you because you are the bravest, the boldest, and very strong. Thanks to you, I sleep in my little bed, even if sometimes I fall asleep to the sounds of explosions. You've been holding strong for almost a year, but that's not surprising because Ukrainians have the blood of the bravest hetmans who defended our land and fought off enemies just like you're doing now. My homeland is the most beautiful country where you always want to live. It is unbreakable, blooming, and with every petal, it opens up more and more. Here in Ukraine, everything was, is, and will be the best. Only comfort will remain. I'm proud to have been born right here. Veronica Zaporozhets, Poltava Lyceum number 1, 2024. And this is a collection of Poltava, Dnipro,
Thank you, Tamara.
Yeah, and just to finalize it, just to see it, Wings of Inspiration. I apologize, I take extra time. This is the kids. The kids came up with it. That's the future of Ukraine. And finally, I just want to say, greatly appreciate the congressional support for the COIL Open World Program. Through the COIL Open World Program would be wonderful to have in every city. It brings that people-to-people connection where you build those individual partnerships and make connections for many, many years to come. Thank you very much. I'll be more than happy to talk later.
Thank you, Tamara, for sharing your passion. Really appreciated the letter from that young woman. Gretchen, you are passionate about Ukrainian children as well. And I know that you have actually had a lot of success communicating a number of things to different audiences about Ukraine. And I'd love to hear your perspective around what you've learned from that experience.
Thank you so much. Hey, everybody. Nice to see you. I feel very lucky to have been working on Ukraine since the beginning of the invasion. Many of you I've worked with, some of you I haven't, but it takes a village, right? And we've all been working so hard for so long to catalyze support across the U.S. public, across our electeds. Things have changed dramatically since the beginning of the invasion. And Marina, you spoke to it beautifully, and Ambassador Preston, Tamara. I just want to offer a little perspective on what we've found and what will, I hope, serve you very well over the next several days of storming the Hill, proverbially. One of the things that we found at the beginning of the invasion was that Americans, they heard about Ukraine a lot. It was an emergency, still is. But it caught the attention of the American public. And a lot of the message really centered around the idea of America being the good guy. That was a deep value that was triggered by an emergency. In our research, we found Americans brought in images of being like Gandalf on a hill, about to take on Helm's Deep, if anyone knows the reference. Yes, you do. Yeah. And that idea of let's be the good guys, let's help Ukraine in this moment was something that carried us forward for a time. But after about 6 months, press coverage dropped by about 80%. And then flash forward to October 7th. Right? Another emergency in the world. Americans shifted in a pretty profoundly dramatic way, not to underscore it too much. But instead of the top value of Americans that resonated being, we're the good guy, Americans wanted to be the strong guy and the effective guy, with goodness being the least important value. And what we found was that messaging that worked really, really well at the top of the invasion about let's go do the good thing didn't matter anymore. What mattered were things like what Senator John Tester was talking about. We don't want to have boots on the ground. And what mattered was we have to be strong and we have to be effective in the way that we show up in the world. It got very confusing. People didn't know what was going on with multiple conflicts that were being undercommunicated. And so I'm going to skip a bunch of things now and just tell you what messaging works. We find that humanitarian messaging, right, is so well received, but it isn't enough. The two strains of humanitarian messaging that we found really works well with electeds in America writ large, talking about the kids, right? I think everybody in this room knows about the kids, right? Stolen by the Russians, about 20K, more, depending on who you talk to. Talking about them in the context of being trafficked and using that word specifically with the Republicans is really, really important. Conservatives, being trafficked and being at risk for trafficking. Referencing the support of our First Lady is really, really important for social proof. And talking about the need to bring the kids back is a wonderful opening to the conversation. I'm sorry I'm talking about it tactically as opposed to any other way. The other thing that's really important from the humanitarian angle and to pull in broad support is to talk about the evangelicals and their persecution. We have some friends over here who are working on that issue, but talking about evangelicals being tortured and killed in Russian-occupied areas is also a critically important conversation. That's a great opener. But I want to say that long-term, the messaging which really is important to instill now is the tactical messaging, talking about how Ukraine is a strategic ally that makes America stronger and more effective. A lot of people are talking these days about making America stronger, and the way that they feel that they can get stronger is through innovation and technology. And that's why things like the minerals deal and things like the drone deal and the things like landing military tech land so well. Talking about how Ukraine is the forerunner of every other country in the world right now in terms of development of tech, which can keep ultimately America more secure and safe, is really, really important. And talking about how we don't want China to get it is also really important. The notion of loss aversion, which is a funny term for just saying, I don't want you to take my stuff that I don't have yet. People don't want to lose to Putin, they don't want to lose to China. And talking about it in those terms, we find is the most effective, impactful way of getting there. So just to recap, open with the kids and the persecuted evangelicals, close with the tech. It's really important to make both of those arguments. And of course, lay the groundwork for community level support, keeping it in the news because the news isn't talking about it enough. But making sure to ultimately build the case for Ukraine as a strategic ally. That's what gets the votes. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Gretchen, before you shut off your mic, I'm actually going to go back to your introduction. Would you share a little bit about how you came across all of this knowledge and research?
Sure. My team and I have been doing foundational research for the Ukraine movement since the beginning of the invasion. We've been very lucky to be in the mix and have done stupid numbers of polls and surveys and interviews, interviewed hundreds of Americans, and have been feeding the movement to catalyze support for Ukraine across continents for years. So, yeah.
Thank you. So, audience, you've heard from a wealth of perspectives, from the local to the global and points in between. I'd actually love to turn it to you. Please ask your questions. And I'm going to go back to where we came, where we started at the very beginning of this panel. My hope is that you all walk away with a list of notes that you're taking to help you more effectively tell your stories so that they're heard by our lawmakers across the next couple of days, across your communities, and across the world. And so with that, I'd like to open it up with questions.
Hi, thank you so much to all the speakers. It was really wonderful to hear from you. My name is Miroslava. I'm a sophomore at Northwestern University, and I'm also the president of the Ukrainian club. And I started studying only last year. And when the full-scale invasion started, our club raised like $16,000 or $12,000, like that was an emergency, right? That was an emergency, and we wanted to help. Like, we donated a lot. But when I came to the university, I was like, yeah, we're going to do a fundraiser right now. We're going to like have thousands, millions, right? But we had only like $200. And I was like really disappointed. I was like, okay, well, how can we communicate, right? So we had a fundraiser like 3 weeks ago for the, maybe, Superhuman Center. They help with prosthetics to those who were injured by the war. And we raised almost $500, which is better. So, Marina, you said that we should communicate effectively, right? How can we communicate carefully, since almost all of us, like students also here in this room, almost all of us are on the student visa. So how can we communicate carefully, especially in the liberal universities, to raise money and help not just those who were like damaged, like, right, who suffered in the war, but also those who are fighting at the front line for our lives right now? Thank you.
since you mentioned my name, I'm going to start, and I'm sure our panelists will join. What you brought up is, I mean, first of all, thank you for doing your work. And this is what really is what's inspiring is having students like you taking an action and doing something. And like Preston said, all we can do is do more. You started with $200, then $500, and you're going to continue to raise that bar only because for fundraising and again, communicating. What's important is persistence, clear messaging, and also reaching out to more people. That's going to be a key for your specific example, right? How to communicate carefully. This is a more challenging part. For majority of us who lead big organizations, who are established advocates, it's an easy part. We've done it because it's experience. We've done it in the past how many years, and then we continue doing it. What I really cherish, and I'm the professor at Georgetown University, besides running United Help Ukraine, and what I love about organizations like yours, Ukrainian organizations that have been forming rapidly since 2022, is that you students, Ukrainian students, American students are taking the lead now. And this is our future, this is the future of this country, and it's also the future of Ukraine. And I always take the opportunity to thank students like you because you already understand how important it is to be part of the community, but also be part of the global mission and supporting people in need and fighting for justice, fighting for democracy, and fighting for freedom. Those values that we've heard that those values are going to be universal. They're for Americans, for Ukrainians, and for all democratic nations. And you taking a stand and moving forward is super important. You're going to have a lot of setbacks, I'm sure, but you also, every step you do more, and then you'll see the results. And of course, you can always come to any of us, any of your peers for support and help, and then I'm sure your community will, once you start outreaching, will continue to support your organization and Ukrainians more and more. Anyone else? Yeah.
Just a moment.
If I can add real quick while you're running over there, kind of a tactical idea here is to try to storytell around the fundraiser instead of about it. There's very few people that are going to want to consume content or information about an actual fundraiser. But if you can tell stories about the things that it'll impact, if you're talking about prosthetics, maybe soldiers that have received them and what that meant, and tell their story, and just a little part of it is, by the way, fundraiser right here. So pull them in with other things, and the fundraiser is just kind of the thing grouping it all together. You're probably going to reach a larger audience and people that otherwise wouldn't, come in just to learn about a fundraiser.
Okay, hello. My name is Courtney. I am with the Return Peace Corps Volunteers Alliance for Ukraine. It's my second summit. This is such a timely panel because the Alliance is about to do a big campaign push on the second edition of our very successful Ukrainian American cookbook. With the first edition of it raised $100,000 that we funneled into humanitarian grants in Ukraine.
Wow.
So I'm thinking about how we're going to be successful. We have inventory, we have books on hand, but we have to change our strategy now because we've tapped into our initial market of people, our Return Peace Corps volunteer buddies and all their friends and family who got these books as holiday gifts and whatever. We've already tapped into that. And so now we're thinking about getting out into bookstores. Our social media only reaches the people who already follow us. So how do we increase outreach on social media to people who aren't already following us? And how do we keep getting what has been a successful project out there to a broader scope of people beyond who's already engaged? Would love to hear your thoughts.
I'll take a pass at this one. And this is something that we heard from our panel, which is know your audience. So you want to expand your audience? Who else are you targeting? I'd bring that clarity of focus to whatever message that you craft to expand that audience. I think it's very, very powerful to write it down. So who do you want to target? And then do your homework, do your research, and understand what might be interesting to them. I am maybe not someone who would have been on your first list for that cookbook, but I am a mother of two. I cook for my family. I'm always looking for something that's easy and quick and different. Maybe think about people who fall in a certain demographic who might be interested in your cookbook, but from a more practical or tactical angle. That would be my suggestion.
I would just offer, as we head into the holiday season, taking advantage of so many of the holiday events that are around and that always involve food, particularly in the run-up around Thanksgiving. Demo the cookbook, have a booth, have people come and taste it. If you've done a good job, they're going to buy the book.
I would also suggest partnering. So if you haven't done it, we talked about partnerships. And this is, again, do more, because I'm sure you're going to reach out to 20 partners and maybe one will respond. So there are many organizations that will be interesting. And I'm sure if you partner with World Central Kitchen, for example, you can reach out to them, or restaurants in your local area saying, we have a book. So reaching out to partners will be also beneficial in your endeavors. But again, do more, because I'm pretty sure from all our collective experience here, you know that you will send out 20 applications or 20 letters for help and maybe one will come back. So unfortunately, the return rate is low. But if you do more, you will definitely find trusted partners. Also, what's important is they might not come to you the first time. But if you read, that's what I was saying about consistency of your communications, is that next time you come to them, they might think this is a greater project for them. So if you reach out to the same people the second, the third time around, you will see that they might be more interested, and they know you, they know what you do. So I think this is for all of us. We need to continue knocking on the door. If we don't, no one's going to open.
Yay.
I knew it. So that's great. Terrific.
Could I add just, we did this book, and this book is being used, again, the media is so important. When they were showing on the news the killing of the children, the hospitals in Ukraine, one of our businessmen in Rochester was so moved by it that he, upon closing his business, opened a private foundation. His magic number is $1 million. And when we published this book, he supported it and is using it as a gateway to other businessmen to help promote his foundation that he started for Ukraine to help displaced Ukrainians, first in our greater Rochester area, and then potentially in other countries around Ukraine for displaced immigrants. Like I'm from the DP camps, the World War II created DP camps. Now we have the history is repeating itself. But you can use that also, your cookbook, reach out to the business community and have them potentially use it as a marketing tool for your efforts to raise funds. And just also building on the university connections with our University of Rochester, we just had a group of Ukrainian students, first time in the history, start a Ukrainian students club. So that was very powerful, and they are working to promote the Ukrainian image at the university, where we also have the Ukrainian Rochester collection, where we are also supporting and promoting the history. Because without knowing your history, you don't know where you're going as well, okay? Use it. The pen is mightier than the sword, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we have one more question here.
Hi, my name's Ian. I'm representing me, I guess, and everybody else in this room. And Preston's smiling, and the question's coming your way, my friend. But then I'd like to ask the rest of the panel the same question. A lot of very specific advice is being given about how to do things. And I'm thinking that the number one thing, and Preston's very self-deprecating about his video capabilities on his channel, but the first thing he did was found somebody to help him. He found an expert to help do editing. He's found an expert to do things that he was not expert at. So I would ask you first, how did you go about finding the right people to do the tasks that you could not do? And I'd ask the panel, how should people in this room go and find the right skilled people to make that sales presentation, to write that script? And those people might not be interested today in what we're all passionate about. Preston?
All right, Ian, appreciate it, sir. So what I would say is back to just doing more. Try it again. Try the next thing. And over iterations, you'll find out what you're good at or what you're not good at. I didn't know how to edit a video at all about 3 years ago, and now that's a big part of my day. I didn't know how to upload a video to YouTube ever, starting about 4 years ago. Now that's a big part of my day. So first off, just try those iterations. Test it out. See what works. I have not done a good job of finding people to plug into that. I've tried at times, have hired some folks, and they've all been awesome, but it hasn't been a good flow in terms of what I'm producing. So I would say just it's keep getting out there, try the at-bat, because we every time I sit and try to war game exactly what the perfect scenario would be, it never works out like that. And in terms of actually finding the right people, again, making the content or putting the information out there, you end up meeting a lot of people that are in the same general space. And I'm sure a lot of folks if I needed an editor right now, I bet we could find one in the audience right now. So the more you put yourself out there, you're going to all of a sudden start having those touch points of people that could fill that gap, I'd say.
I think this is a very tough question for those of you who form the teams, because we know there are so many elements that you need to find in one person that will be that match for what you do. And I think for all of us who work in humanitarian sector and who really believe in the mission of our organization or our organizations, and collectively now as a coalition, which has more than 45 member organization and so many of you delegates who come here, what's important is, one, finding a person who believes in your mission and who is ready to work nonstop for making sure that that mission is accomplished. So you have to find someone passionate who really believes in your mission. And number two, of course, the skill is important part as well. You're finding someone who is as skillful as possible in that. And then also three, the personal fit. We all know that when you form the team, those three factors you need to find in one person. It's super hard, but when you find someone like that, you know that the person will be working and will be producing extremely powerful content or extremely powerful whatever work that they're doing. So hard, but it's possible.
Thank you. And I just want to remind you that we have QR code on screen, and you can leave your questions and we will come back to you in email. And I think we will have the last one. And I see the hand on the back. I'm running to you.
Thanks for this panel. It's really great. My name is Susan Smith-Peter. I'm a historian of Russia who has decided to stand with Ukraine. And I just want to share some of, thank you. That's the first time I've got a round of applause. It doesn't happen with Russianists, I'll tell you that. So my question has a little bit of foregrounding to it. I'm a historian and I am a professor. I gave my students a survey about their feelings about giving money to Ukraine, that is to say, supporting Ukraine. This was after October 7th, and I was really struck by how hostile they were to the idea. The people on the left were very hostile to it because they felt that it was supporting military-industrial complex. The people on the right were like, well, why should we be, helping somebody else? We have so many problems here. And I wonder if there's a limit to what stories can do. They weren't that moved by stories. There was one exception. I did have them watch 20 Days in Mariupol, and some of them did change their minds. So I wonder if it doesn't have to be immersive. You see, 20 Days in Mariupol is like really immersive, but for them, it seems like just the stories themselves it's just not enough. and it becomes a little bit difficult to shift people's minds. And I'm just curious about what you think about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And sorry, I'm just going to seize the day. Yeah, I think that that's a really good point. I mean, I think what you're seeing there is evidence of the horseshoe effect that we often see in our research. People on the far left and the far right often are fed a lot of messages online that America should just sit down and stay home, watch Netflix. Or YouTube, watch Preston's show. Actually, definitely watch his show. And I think that is something that we're directly combating on the ground. I think that it depends on your audience, right? So if you're speaking to electeds, which I spoke to earlier about the messaging, the kids, the evangelicals, the tactical, blah, 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 that's really impactful when it comes to legislation and U.S. support. When it comes to young people and community level, that's where I think connection, experiential, saturation, seeing what's happening on the ground, understanding it on a personal level, developing relationships, getting saturated with culture. Those are the kinds of conversations which move hearts and minds. So I think your instincts are absolutely beautiful and your values and your heart are in the right place. So just thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you. If I can just add, it's not just stories for story's sake. I had said this earlier. Find that common ground. And fortunately, if you have a story that reinforces that shared value, principle, history, geography, context, that is where then the story makes it stick, right? And then people actually can recognize what we share and become more deeply committed. I found that even with very, very, very hard to convince members of Congress and the Senate when you're able to speak to something that really matters to them and they can see themselves in that. There's nothing more powerful. The story is a conveyor of that common ground that you've identified, and what you want to do is have it resonate and be remembered.
Thank you. Thank you, audience, for your questions and engagement. And thank you to our panelists for your perspectives, strategies, and tactics for helping us tell and communicate stories more effectively. Thank you so much.